before we get started, one of the things that I like to focus on before I do a workshop, because for me, it's a lot about changing thinking rather than teaching you a couple of quick skills that you can go and run away and think you've learned something. What I really like to do as part of workshops with me is really look at a way of really transforming your business and working out what we can do that is going to benefit your business and your financial careers for a very long period of time. And before I can start explaining the worksheet that I'm sure that everybody's got handed, if you don't, please make sure that you've got a copy. But before I go through this worksheet with you, I want to first, and please don't look at it just yet, trust me, we'll get there. What I want to do first is I want to tell you a story of a person called Wendy, and she owned a company called the Beijing Language Academy, and she taught Mandarin to students and adults and children in California. And one of the problems she was having was that predominantly there were so many people moving into California that also spoke Mandarin. They wanted to get jobs really quickly. They had a functional skill to teach Mandarin themselves, so they decided, that's it, let's go and open up a business doing that. Now, she was trying to charge between $50 to $80 an hour, and she had all these new entrants coming into the market that were willing to charge $30, $40, $50 an hour, some even less, just to get market penetration to start their business. Now, I'm sure a lot of people here have been in that place where you're trying to start your business for the first time, so you're trying to undercut everybody in price just so you get those first testimonials. The problem for her was there were so many people doing this, she was losing client after client and struggling to get every additional client just because they were trying to charge so much less than what she was charging. So she came to me with the question, how do I compete with all these new entrants? And my answer was, what we want to do is start trying to avoid the battle altogether. See, she was fighting every day just to teach people Mandarin. And what I did is, with Wendy, like I do with everybody I work with, I get them first to understand what their goals are. Now, the truth is that if every person in this room hasn't gone and done their goals yet, go and speak to one of the coaches in the back of the room that the Freelance Association has sorted out. Trust me, it's worth it. Michelle Baker is unbelievable at this. She's up there. She's one of my clients, and we'll talk about how we did her message a little bit later on. But when you do this and you know what your goals are, that is one of the most important things about working out what differentiates you from everyone else. See, I've worked with heaps of organizations before I started doing goals, and I can create rapid growth out of everything. But the truth is, there's nothing worse than having to work with a bunch of clients you hate working with. So if you don't have your goals first, there's two things that go wrong. One is you can work with the wrong group of customers, and the second is who you end up branding yourself or naming yourself actually isn't congruent with who you are. And a lot of people that have moved into freelance or moved into businesses for themselves, they spent a lot of work deciding who they wanted to be and how they wanted to place themselves into society. So they left that job because that wasn't who they were, and they went out to business for themselves. Now, if we don't keep your message and who you are congruent with you, then all of a sudden, you've lost who you are, you've lost your sense of soul in your own business that you worked so hard to get out into. So what I would suggest, if anybody hasn't worked out their goals yet, I want them to do those. The next thing that we did with Wendy, and again, this will be part of the workshop that we're about to do, is we got her to work out who her ideal customers were. Now, with Wendy, what I realized was there were a couple of things she was doing outside the scope of teaching plain Mandarin to clients. And it was only for 2 clients, but the first thing she did was she helped them understand something called Galaxy. Now, for people that don't understand what Galaxy is, it's a lot different to what you expect. You know, it's not outer space. It's a term that's used in China for understanding rapport. Now, see, in the Western world, we want to try and have a conversation today. Maybe we'll do a deal today. Maybe if we're really, turning our wheels, we'll do a deal within the next week. But nothing really takes longer than that. Nothing takes more than a few phone calls, maybe a few meetings at the absolute most. In the Eastern world, it's all about getting to know you in a much more substantial way. So they want to go out to dinner with you a lot of times. They want to find out about your family, the kind of person you are. They probably want to see you drunk over karaoke to see what kind of person you are. And without having that experience with you, they don't want to talk business. Why? Because they're not doing deals for 12 months or 24 months like we do here in America or what we do back home in Australia. They're talking 50 to 100-year contracts. That's longer than most people's lifetimes. And as a result, they want to make sure that who they're getting into bed with is the right person, because the contracts they write are very hard to get out of. So she helped them understand this. The next thing she helped them understand was the difference between e-commerce here in the Western world and e-commerce in the Eastern world. Hugely different. And the third thing she helped them understand is how to reduce their accent. See, while we have people coming into America all the time and into Australia, and perhaps they don't spend a lot of effort trying to understand our accents, in China it's all about respect. If you spend no time understanding, or sorry, trying to change your accent, or at least trying to assimilate, they see that as disrespectful. Remember, the Chinese culture is one where if somebody hands you a business card, you hold it, you cherish it, you look at it, you appreciate, a lot of cases you'll bow and then you'll put it in your pocket. And if executives don't understand this, well then they're going to have a lot of trouble trying to work and find business in China. So what I said to Wendy is I said, Wendy, you are doing so much more than just teaching these people Mandarin. What are you doing? Now, she couldn't figure it out. I said, Wendy, you're helping people, and this is where we get into differentiated and unified messaging. Okay, she's helping people become successful in China. Now, the reason for why that message works so well is you think about it. Yes, they understand Mandarin, but the truth is, understanding Mandarin is not what's going to make them successful in China. Understanding the e-commerce systems, understanding the concept of Galaxy, and understanding why it's important to reduce their accent and some of the other cultural things, that's going to truly make that difference. What makes this story even better is all of a sudden she stopped charging $50 to $80. We created the China Success Intensive. She rebranded to the China Success Coach. And she opened the China Success Institute. Now, she gets paid $30,000 to do a 5-week China Success Intensive. Now, that's rapid growth. Instead of struggling to get $50 to $80 per hour, she's now getting paid $30,000 to do a 5-week program with the executive, the spouse, and any children to make sure that they're best prepared to go to China. Now, why the spouse and the children? Well, first, you can charge more if you include more people. But secondly, and look, we're all trying to make sales, I get that. But secondly, how important is it that we make sure that the spouse and the children are prepared to go to China? You think you're an executive in a new place, and all of a sudden, you've got to be working ridiculous hours. If your spouse and children aren't happy, if they're not successful in their own right, then you're going to keep getting called home. That turned it into a $30,000 program. Now, the next thing that we realized was that Wendy didn't have to sell that hard anymore. What we realized was there was a whole group of people that were paid to organize a visa to get someone relocated to China. And so executives who want to go across to China will pay someone some money to get a working visa to go and do business operations over there. So what we did was we networked with a few immigration agents and we created a storyline where a consultant in there would say, okay, so you're off to be, your visa's approved, you're about to be relocated to China. I just wanted to double check how much research you've done about how to do business effectively in China. And they'd respond, well, nothing. And they would say, oh, well, I bet you really need to go and speak to the China Success Coach. They'd book an appointment there and then, putting their affiliate code down, and they would make a $3,000 commission for any sale that was made as a result of doing one of those referrals. That's more than what they made to do the visa, by the way. So as a result, that was the thing they focused on most. Now, Wendy's making $27,000 instead of $50 to $80 an hour, and she doesn't have to do any sales. So while Shelley was very nice to point out that I started in sales, the truth is, if you start in sales, you've already lost. Because if you don't have a differentiated and unified message, then you're working so much harder than you need to. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today in the workshop. We're going to be working on figuring out exactly what your unified message is, how you're going to differentiate, so that you get that to crystal clear clarity, so that then you can start telling people what you do outside, I'm a graphical designer, I'm a videographer, I'm a language coach, I'm a business coach. You've got to think about what is the unique benefit that you provide, and then what is the higher level benefit of that. Now, here is the thing that a lot of people get stuck in. What is your functional skill? People always assume that they need to include their functional skill. For Wendy, she was a language coach. So when we started talking about becoming the China Success Coach or the China Success Institute, she was like, but that doesn't tell people that I teach people Mandarin. The truth is, people learn Mandarin to obtain an outcome. They don't learn Mandarin because they think it's cool that they want to be able to recite it in the bathroom when no one's looking. Okay, it's just the truth. That's not what we do. Now for me, I'm a sales strategist, okay? I'm a marketing specialist. I'm a branding expert. We could create a list, right? I'm a neuro-linguistic programming master. For everybody in this room, we could create a list for you too. The truth is, you spend a lifetime learning what it is to be you. But when you're trying to explain that to someone, you generally will respond with, I'm a coach, or I'm a Mandarin teacher, or all these things that you do that are just the functional skill of what you do. They're not the reasons or the benefits for why people buy. Okay, so this is one of the things that I like to talk about just before we do this workshop, and that is that most people say, I'll just hire a fantastic salesperson. Now the truth is, every single person in this room, you will be able to hire a salesperson that can sell ice to Eskimos. But let me ask you, if they were selling blankets instead, do you think that you'd all make a lot more money? Okay? You really would. And what we're trying to do is we're going to, in this workshop, turn your ice into blankets. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to pull out the worksheet that we've got there. Okay, for the first one, I'm going to give you a little bit of extra time because I really want you to do a bit of soul searching. Okay? What I want you to do is I want you to write down not just customer names, the names of people that you work with. Now, if there are 100 names that are all very similar, that's fine. Write them down anyway. If there's one name that seems like it shouldn't be on the page because you've only worked with one of them, that's fine too. Write that down. Okay, remember, Wendy used to work hugely with a large demographic of customers where she struggled to get $50 to $80 an hour, and there were 2 clients she worked with that became her new business model that now means that she can't keep up with the number of client inflows that she gets. Now, before we get into this, I'm just going to introduce 2 people in the room because there are two of my clients here that have just gone through doing this rebranding, and I just want to use them as examples to take your thinking out of what your functional skill is. Now, Alex Murphy is here. So, Alex, do you want to stand up for me? Do we have any way of getting him a mic, or can everyone hear him okay? Do we have a mic? Can we do this? We can? Okay, great. Lesson number 1 of speaking on stage, always double check that you can do something before you say you're going to do it.
Yeah, can we?
No, that's okay. Alex, do you want to just speak loudly and just explain what you do and what you did and what you now do?
I run a video marketing company all around media. We do web content for awesome businesses. And talking with Matthew, I realized that was truly just the functional skill of what we offer, video marketing. And what I realized through my goals is that it was really more of messaging and helping businesses craft stories into the narrative of who they are as a company. And so we came up with the term narrative strategist. And so I've used that on a couple clients now, and it really reframes what it is that we do. So we're not just shooting videos, but we're helping craft more unique narrative into all these different types of content, which will then allow us to eventually expand into many other areas beyond video.
Brilliant. So, thanks, Alex. I appreciate that. Can we give him a little clap for a second? Thank you. I know how hard it is to stand up. So, the reason why that was so profound is Alex does so much more, really, than just shoot video. And he wanted to do so much more than shoot video, but he always found that he was tendering for a single video explainer. Every single time it was a new tender because he was a videographer. Now, he's much more than that, just from a simple name and the way he explains it. And what I want you to understand is by crafting your name successfully, all of the content that you write, all of your presentations and proposals that you do, they become simple. Because now, instead of saying, oh, I'll do that explainer video, you're now tendering for, I will do everything about how we share that narrative to your audience. That will be through videos that I will continue to do for you, and all other forms of media, including blog posts, podcasts, whatever they want to do. Because what Alex is fantastic at is sharing that narrative with the world. And he wanted to focus predominantly within that storytelling, but his marketing and the way he set up his branding was all in video. And that was a conflict with what he wanted to achieve, but what he could make money doing right now. And by simply creating something that encapsulated it, but didn't focus on it, all of a sudden he's tendering for some very big deals right now, and the message is embedded within all of it. Now, Michelle, I think we've got Michelle here as well. So thank you for hustling, Shelley. I appreciate it.
And could you turn mine?
Yes,
there we go.
And then we'll just share.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle.
Can you hear?
Can you all hear me? Cool. Yes, Matthew, I'm yours.
Perfect. So I want you to just explain, because you obviously did my session only about, what, a week ago? A few days ago?
Actually, yeah. It was just a few days ago, it feels like, yes.
So Michelle has focused predominantly on one specific message for a long, long time, and it wasn't working. But she couldn't work out how to change it, because she does a very specific thing, and we needed to step her out of that. So go for it, Michelle. Tell us exactly what the difference was.
So before I do these seminars, and people actually create the quote-unquote vision board, and I was stuck in the vision board, and Matthew helped me find my way out of it, because it's not exactly what I do. So I was an action strategist doing vision boards, and so now I am a congruency catalyst, and I have a strategic process to help people find out exactly what they want from their goals that propels them to experience the success that they want. So.
Thank you very much, Michelle. That was brilliant. Appreciate it. So the focus here is really understanding the difference with, that is more congruent with what Michelle does than what Michelle said she did. Okay, it's not about stepping into the SEO core word that you need to use that's going to sell you today. It's about encapsulating the full value of what you do. And I really want you to think about that when you're writing these names down. So let's take about 7 minutes to write down the names of every single person that you've worked with that A, you've made really, really great money out of, or B, had huge success with. And if you don't know who you've had huge success with, they're the ones telling everyone about you and giving you all those referrals that perhaps we don't appreciate as much as we should, but that probably feed our business. So let's start just writing down all the names of all those people that we help. This is going to be probably the longest amount of time that anyone spent working on their business rather than in their business. So I just want to give you guys a second to pat yourselves on the back. Now, the truth is that if you aren't completely aligned with your goals, the next steps, these are going to be the best we can do right now. But this process will work with you after you write down your goals as well. Now, there's a lot of people upstairs that will be more than willing, and I think they're all free to help, right? Yep, so they're wonderful coaches that are free, and they'll help you work out what your goals are. There's also, for people that don't know of my podcast, it's called Better Business Coach Podcast, and there's an episode, which is episode 17, which is called Forget Goals, Why is the Key to Success? This will talk you through the exact process that I use with my clients to get them to become crystal clear with their goals. So if you feel and you don't get a chance to have a chat with some of the great people, hi Rodney, how are you doing? Rodney's also a wonderful coach that's going to be helping you out there, another one of my clients, and he focuses on goals as well. So what I want you to do is really take the opportunity to become very, very clear at exactly who you are, because to find a unified message that's congruent with who you are, you've got to start with finding out who you are. And a lot of people, their goals tend to be a collection of what their family has instilled that's important, their college roommates instilled were important, their people that they met perhaps at a bar once told them they were important. They went, hey, that's cool, that's what I'm going to focus on. And this really gets you to focus on what your goals are and why they're important to you. However, for today's purposes, again, I'm just going to give you, we've got about 20 seconds left. If there is one customer that you worked with just once, but you really enjoyed and you made great money out of, and that's not on that list, write that name down. Okay, so now what I want you to do is step 2 of the process is really looking at that list, and you'll start to notice some similarities between different names on that list. And what you'll find is that a lot of those you probably provided a lot of the same things to. So what I want you to do is look at that list now, and we're only going to give you about 30 seconds for this. And what I want you to do is just put those into groups. And we call these customer segments. If you notice that any of these are similar in any way, you can group them. Now, if they're not exactly the same, it's fine to group them too. Remember what we're doing now, we have a short period of time, but for most people, they should be spending this time at least every 6 months going back and re-looking at this message. One of the things that I learned very, very young was that when I created my first unified message, which created the largest independent mobile phone brokerage in the country, 6 months later, people were starting to copy what I did, and I got upset with that. And instead, I should have learned that that's one of the biggest compliments ever. And I have clients now that want to use a lot of the stuff that I do, and that's a great compliment for me. But the truth is, this is something that you should black out every 6 months, half a day, and re-going through and do. But for today's purposes, just write down the grouping the way you see best. Now, I want to double check. Have we got texters on the table, blue and red? Has everyone got a blue and red marker? Thank you, Shelley. So, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to now, I want you to pull out that big red marker, and I want you to circle all of the people that you made fantastic money out of. If you made unbelievable money out of that group of people, I want you to circle those people in red. Okay, so while we've got those markers out, I then want you to pull out the big blue marker that you've got on the table, and I want you to circle every single customer that you got an unbelievable review from, gave you a testimonial, sings your praises to every single person they meet. People you got unbelievable results for. Now, what you'll notice is there are probably groups, and I've very infrequently seen somebody that has had no groups with a red and a blue circle around them. Does anyone not have a red and a blue circle around something? Perfect. So now, a lot of people, and this is where people can come unstuck, a lot of people will have a blue and a red circle around lots of different customer groups. And one of the things that we learn is that if you want to spend your life selling to everybody in different ways, you can't have a unified message. You've got to pick one group that you work with predominantly. And then the other ones you can help, but they're not who you're going to direct your message to. So what I want you to do is I want you to pick one of those customer groups. I want you to give it a name, and I want you to write it. If we've got a back of the page, I want you to write it on the back of the page. Now that you've got that there, I want you to write down from the customer's perspective, not what benefit you get out of working with the customer, but what the customer benefit is from working with you. I want you to write down the main benefits that the customer get from working with you outside the functional skill that you provide. Like for Wendy, if she wrote Mandarin on the page, it would have been the wrong answer. But helping people understand Galaxy, helping them understand accent reduction and why that's important, helping them understand e-commerce and how to develop a relationship better in China, those would be a list of all the things she did. And she came up with about 20 different things. And with other clients, they come up with sometimes just 3 or 4, other times heaps. This is what's called the unique benefits that you provide outside the skill set or the functional skill you have. See, you are uniquely skilled. You have been brought up, have been raised, have learned different things to every single other person that is doing the exact same thing in your industry. And that gives you the unique ability to help somebody in a different way to anyone else in your industry. And this is what gives you the congruence to create the unified message. So write down the benefits that the customer receives for everything that you do. Now, we'll take about 2 minutes here because this can be, sometimes for people, a really tough thing because most of the things that you think you do for clients aren't actually the things that the client appreciates the most. Because if they were, they would be constantly talking to you about the fact that they could get it cheaper, even after working with you for 3 or 4 sessions. So think about the core things. This could be a conversation that you had with a client that said, hey, you know, I really appreciate what you did, but these are the real things that I really got out of this. And you may have disregarded it because these are outside the scope of what you do. For this exercise, it is the most important thing. So continue, just write down all of the benefits that the customer receives, Now, for those that struggled a little bit there, again, the coaches upstairs will help you provide a completely different perspective to what you currently do. Now that you've got a list of the benefits that you provide, if you can't find something outside your functional skill, then you really need to speak to one of the coaches upstairs that can help you do that. Now, what I want you to do now is I want you to look at that list and I want you to think about how you can talk about the higher level benefit of all of those things that still encapsulates your functional skill, but just focus on the primary things that you do above and beyond in your industry. And write down a sentence, a word, 2 or 3 words. You heard Alex, he summed up everything that he does in 2 words. We have Michelle, who summarized everything that she does in 2 words. We've got Rodney upstairs, everything that he did in 2 words. What is a simple way that you can do it? Now, here's some tricks that I use. Sometimes, for instance, Alex's story, he likes to tell stories. He wants to be the storyteller. You might get down a word and still do it in the moment now. You might write down the word storyteller. If you start to look for synonyms, a synonym for storyteller is narrative. So if you can't find a really concise way, you can write down a sentence, a few words of what you do now that encapsulates what you do, and then you can go away and look for synonyms that sound cooler. The truth is that this is the best way that encapsulates what you do. Now, for a lot of people, their major worry is that, oh wait, hang on a second, if I'm going to call myself this, it's confusing. Somebody's not going to understand what I mean. For instance, what does narrative strategist really mean? Well, the truth is, when you go to a networking event and you say, I'm a video guy, I record explainer videos, I know exactly what you mean, and what's my response going to be? Oh, that's nice, I'm going to go speak to someone else, because now you're about to sell me something. However, if you say an enterprise narrative strategist or a narrative strategist, well, the truth is, what's going to happen then is the client's going to go, I'm sorry, what is that? Now you have the customer's permission to tell them what you do. And that can take a paragraph, a few sentences, and this is where you start to talk about the benefits of what you do and explain that it's not just video, it's something completely different to video, it's embedding an entire story. But if he had said that straight off the bat from calling himself a video, now we're trying to sell something, it's obvious that we are. So don't worry that it's a little ambiguous. Ambiguous is actually what we're trying to achieve. But the words that you want should be focused in what the core benefit for the client is. For instance, mine's rapid growth. Who doesn't want rapid growth when you're an organization? It's easy, it tunes people in. So you need it to be something that it's a benefit that the customer wants, but encapsulates the true values of what you provide. Okay, so now we're going to talk about niche marketing a little bit, because the truth is, if we're speaking to everybody, we're speaking to nobody. And the truth is, a great message is great, but if you're not speaking to the right group of people, it's pointless. Because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be speaking to this person who kind of feels like it's a fit, but maybe not. This person who doesn't think it's a fit. This person that's really excited about it. But you're going to spend your time speaking to all of these people. Speaking to everybody is speaking to nobody. Plus, unless you've got the budget of Coca-Cola, it's ridiculously expensive. What you need to do is you need to focus on that one niche market that loves what you do. And you've encapsulated, you already know who that is. It's the one that's got the blue and the red circle around it. Now you've got the message and you know who you should be focused on. Okay? Anybody that steps out of that, and a lot of people say, am I missing out? Well, the truth is, no, you're not going to miss out. Because if you're speaking to everybody, then you're not going to be speaking to all of the clients that want to buy from you. Then you're truly missing out. Okay? Now, with niche marketing, I want to explain what I mean by that. Because I'm going back now 5 years, 6 years ago, I started a school. It was very equivalent to your colleges that you have here in the US, and it was in Australia, and I was trying to work out what I could do to start a new school and create rapid growth. And I felt that this was a tricky one, because no one trusts a new school. There are 2 types of main markets. The first one is you have a market for professionals. These people have got a degree, and they want to go back and do additional study. Now, it may be somebody that is a doctor, a lawyer, but they're starting their own business and they want business skills. And they know that the best way to go and do that is to go and do an MBA. Plus, it's going to give them credibility. So if I went after that market, it's a huge market, it would have been years and years before I started to create customer penetration. Most schools of that level will get a couple of hundred students in their first few years of operation before they start to develop credibility. The next problem I had is I could have gone after graduate students. Now, graduate students, again, a great market. Problem is, I don't have a great football team. I didn't have a marching band. I didn't have any of the aesthetics like credibility that kids going out to get that piece of paper that they need to leverage for the rest of their lives would expect from an institution. If I had gone to them, again, I would have been completely, again, 100, 200 students in the first few years if I was lucky, and most of those probably would have left after the first 6 months. They would have used me to go and get into a better school. There was one market, though, that worked. The truth was that there are so many people in society that have been let down by traditional education. These people generally would leave school at the age of 16. They would go and do an apprenticeship in plumbing, electrical, painting, floristry, you could name it. All of these apprenticeships. These people started off having jobs. However, eventually they wanted to go out to business for themselves. Why? Generally they were working a lot harder than everyone else, or a lot more effective than everyone else, and they were still getting paid very similar to everyone else. And they went, that's it, I'm going to go out and work for myself. Truth is that running a business is much more than just the functional skill. I'm sure everyone in the room knows this. So now they're in charge of their own bookkeeping, they're in charge of their own marketing, they're in charge of their own sales, and they're in charge of all their staff. And just like they hated their boss when they first started, because the only way their boss knew how to communicate with them, to teach them, was through sarcasm and through aggression, which is how a lot of these people learn how to do their functional skill, they were doing the exact same thing. They needed business coaching. The problem was they couldn't afford business coaching because all of these things going wrong in their business meant they didn't have the money to pay for it. They also had a big problem. They had a view of schools that if you can't do, you teach. And this was very, very common in Australia. It's still very common here. If schools let you down, you have to create a wall for why it let you down. And this was the view that people had of schools. So what we did was we created a message, business coaching at a price you can afford. It was a very specific niche. We only sold to tradespeople, and the rule of thumb that we had is if they're not on a trade site, okay? You're not on a property that's building a house, you are not our customer. It launched to 3,500 students in 3 years. Why? Because nobody else was delivering to them. We had no competition. If you wanted to learn to be a better tradesperson, there were so many places you could go to be a better builder, a better plumber. These people couldn't get into an MBA. They didn't even have an undergraduate degree. They didn't have the experience necessary, plus they hated school. What we did was we created a mastermind group. Every single school, every single class had a teacher that was actually not a teacher, they were a business coach. And every person in the group was a business owner. And they were all from the trade demographic. So what we had was a seminar that was run like a school. And every single time you had huge amounts of value that was added because they'd mastermind between the group of them. The teacher became a facilitator and they were all qualified coaches. They needed education. We gave them what they wanted while providing what they needed. And that was a niche that created rapid growth. Now, sure, later down the track we expanded out and we moved out to, we said, okay, well if you're a florist, then although you're not on a trade site, you are still technically a person with a strong functional skill, so we will then market to you as well. We then became not the school for the tradesperson, we became, on the trade site, we became the school for anyone that had done an apprenticeship. We had huge numbers of hairdressers that studied with us. Later down the track though, we were approached by the Law Institute of Victoria, one of the largest medical associations in Australia, and these people are like, well, our people are they just have functional skills. Even though they're doctors and lawyers, they've learned a skill, but they haven't learned the soft skills to run a business. So we grew into that as well. We then took on your equivalent of national premiership football teams in Australia, the AFL, your equivalent of the NFL. We picked up your equivalent of Macy's, all these larger customers. None of them would have happened unless we were very, very specific to that niche first. And only once we capitalized and became the brand of reputation in that niche to expand out. So one of the things that you're going to be focused on over this very short period of time is, okay, well I want to focus on that, but I want to do this, and this too. Sure, we're entrepreneurs. We want to follow the shiny objects, but you want to follow one specific niche with one specific message with one specific person that you help. When you do that, you get rapid growth. But this is the real question that I want you to focus on. What is the unmet need out there in the market? For tradespeople, they wanted business coaching at a price we can afford. We delivered that. However, for you, it could be something very different. Okay, and this is the last thing that I want to leave you with. Thank you. The truth is that this message is only as good as the person that's actually out telling people about it. And if you're not out talking to people continuously about your unique message, and trust me when I say this, if you're a PR agent, the meetup group for PR agents is not the right place to go. Okay? You need to go and share this message at the meetup groups, at the networking functions where your ideal client is. And the quote goes like this. It says, if you don't think you're a salesperson, I think we're actually going to get there. No, we're going the wrong way. If you don't think you're a salesperson, look around the room. If it's just you and your laptop, you are the salesperson. Okay, just leave it on that one if you can. So what I want you to do is, and the core message, because most people spend no time on marketing whatsoever in their business. They go out, they spend 5 years learning their functional skill, and maybe 5 more practicing before they even go into business for themselves. That's a huge amount of education to have a competency in what you do. Yet when it comes to sales and marketing, they're like, well, that's not my thing. Well, I can tell you, it's not my thing either. But I learned the systems, the processes, and the structures to doing it. And Abraham Lincoln said it best. If you've got 6 hours to cut down a tree, spend the first 4 sharpening the saw. Most businesses spend hours and hours, days, months, writing proposals, calling new clients, focusing on everything except for refining the message. It's akin to chopping the tree down without ever sharpening the saw. And what I challenge every person in the room to do today is to focus on sharpening that saw first.
I knew that would be a useful exercise. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I know it's funny because I'm glad you mentioned coaching, and I'm glad that you in particular are here doing this presentation, because I know for me, I've done this exercise before. I've written down the clients and analyzed that, but I get something different out of it every time I do it. So just as a reminder, because I do think it's an important process, how often should you do that?
So again, I do it every 6 months for myself. And what I mean by that is, if you become a perfectionist, you can spend a lifetime doing this, or you can be trying to change it every single day. I suggest that what you do is, and there was a podcast I was on recently, and he called it white time, but get out your calendar and book it in for half a day or a full day, whatever you feel comfortable with, every 6 months. Come up with what that name is and how you're going to do it, and just use that. Be completely congruent with it and let that be your unified message. And then in 6 months' time, you can look at it and work out whether or not it needs to be morphed, added to a different niche, whether you can expand. If you do it any sooner than that, I mean, rapid growth can be one of the scariest things for any business. It can send you broke just as easily as it can make you successful, right? And if you do it every couple of weeks, then you can find you're spending so much time changing the messaging, you haven't got time to find new customers. Use that message and go out. Again, a lot of people say, oh, the message wasn't working, and I'm like, how many people have you spoken to about it? Oh, I spoke to my friends about it. Have you gone to a networking event that isn't your group of people that you work with normally? Try and sell it. So every 6 months, relook at it and put it in your diary, and just do it every single time at 6 months. The rest of the time, embrace it, tell the story, be congruent with it, and make it your own.
Can I ask you another follow-up question?
Sure.
And this is something you and I have never talked about, but it is a question that came up for me. I know sometimes I have customers that I know they seemed really happy after our interaction, and I made money from them, which was great, but I find myself sometimes wondering why. Like, I don't entirely grasp why they were so happy with me in particular. Do you ever ask them directly, or how do you know if you're not sure?
Definitely. So, and Nando's in the room, so he talked about starting with why just before. So I want to link back to that. If you know what your why is, then first thing is you will start to understand exactly why a person loves what you do. Because if it's all you do and you're not stretching who you are, it will become a lot easier. But yes, of course, ask your customers. What are the things, and every single person in this room that's been my customer will know that at the end of the first session, they write me a testimonial. At the end of the third session, they write me a testimonial. Why? Because the first one is, oh my God, he rebranded me in 2 hours. And the last one is, here is the financial ramifications. I don't have to guess. I know exactly what I did for that customer. We're terrified as freelancers, as any business, to say, hey, did you get a great experience? Would you mind writing a testimonial? Don't just ask, get them to write it down. Because if you get them to write it down, you can use it to speak to someone just like them who has a problem just like them that you can leverage into a new customer that pays you just like them.
I love that it all starts with the clarity. If you know what you're doing and you're clear about what you're doing, that's of course what they're going to love you for. That's fantastic. Thank you, Matthew. I learn something every single time we talk, and I appreciate that.
Great.
And are you going to be upstairs with the?
So I'll be around until about 2 o'clock. So if anyone wants to have, if anyone got to the point where they couldn't figure something out, please use this time to come and talk to me. I'm more than happy to help you out while we're here.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great to meet you all. Cheers.
I'm Emily Leach, and I am the founder of the Freelance Conference and also the founder of the Texas Freelance Association. My goal in life these days is to help freelancers make more money, and actually strive to create that dream, that lifestyle that they stopped working a job for. Matthew was wonderful on stage. He was one of those few people that can get on stage and just sit in a chair and be very calm and have complete command of the audience. It was wonderful. He took not only command of that stage, but he really engaged me. It was me and him, even though there was 150 other people around me, and I felt like I could achieve what he was leading me through, and I walked away knowing that I now had a relationship with this person on stage. As a TEDx organizer over the years, I have put on 5 different events, spoke at 2 different events myself. So let's say I have seen quite a few speakers, and Matthew was definitely at the top. He did a fantastic job of staying on point, being articulate, and being able to portray a message. You can sit down with him and have a cup of coffee, and it feels like you knew him your whole life.
Matthew at the Freelance conference did a workshop where we learned the rapid path to cash and success in our business. And he gave us really actionable steps, because as a freelancer myself, one of the problems I had was I do event planning, and that's just so basic and simple. It was how to set myself apart. And so Matthew provided several different ways to kind of get the juices flowing, to think differently about what unique talents that I have and what unique programs and services that I could offer in the world of event planning that would set me apart from other people in the same industry. Within 2 weeks after attending the conference, ended up having 4 clients that I had not had before because of using the tips and tools that Matthew had provided at the workshop, because I looked at my business in a completely different way, and I approached how I approached client meetings in a very different way. And I was shocked, actually, because I had been struggling for months to try to get even 1 client, and then I had 4 within 2 weeks after Matthew's workshop.
The first time I saw Matt speak was at the Freelancers Conference here in Austin, Texas, and he's such a dynamic speaker, extremely genuine, very assertive, and very confident, and you saw that from the moment he stepped on the stage. Matt's style is extremely dynamic, but very relaxed. He makes you feel at home whenever he's on stage, almost like you're speaking to someone that you've known for years, helping you to navigate through that and key in on what you wanted to say. Stop getting so flustered and trying to do everything. Focus in on what you are really great at and deliver that to the market. What I loved most about the conversation, well, I shouldn't even say conversation, but the presentation that Matt had, sometimes it just feels like it's a conversation because that's how engaging he is. But with the content that he had, it really helped you to focus in as an entrepreneur on what you are best at so that you can have rapid growth in that area. The best thing that I received from Matt's presentation on stage was to really easily articulate what my signature strength was. I guess my elevator pitch.
I've seen lots of presentations and have quite a bit of comparison points to Matthew. What I loved about Matthew's style was he started delivering value almost from the second word. I think it was right after he said, "Hello, I'm Matthew," the next one was, "Let's go to work." Matthew and I actually met during the lunch hour, and he and I chatted quite a bit about having a non-sales background and coming to sales from that. He shared with me, just on a one-on-one conversation, some of his learnings, including pulling out diagrams on his phone, which was terrific. Matthew's workshop really helped us hone in on the outcomes that we want our customers to have and the value that we deliver to them. Everybody in the room was completely taken with it. And he had a terrific handout that helped everybody do it. Out of the whole day, the 30-minute session was the one we got the most out of. I felt like I was a part of the presentation, as odd as that sounds when I'm sitting in an audience, but it truly was. I went home and started writing content for my website based on what I'd learned at the conference. And my partner and I had long discussions about, oh, now I know how to express this. We reformulated an elevator pitch. I was quickly able to internalize that and start meeting people and saying to them, I can help you grow. instead of saying, I'm a consultant. Many of us struggle for many years to try and find that perfect balance of, I would rather have a job I love to do than anything else, and how do I get paid to do that? Turns out it's a little easier than you thought it was. You can just go find the patterns, and it was terrific.